Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a pretty fascinating tech showdown to dive into from our source guide on modern web security. We're essentially stacking up an enterprise Goliath, Aruba Network's remote browser isolation, against the agile, standalone David known as Send.win. If you follow network security at all, you already know that protecting endpoints is evolving incredibly fast. So let's unpack exactly how these two very different approaches tackle the exact same problem.
So here's the massive question we're dealing with. How do you actually browse the web safely when literally every single click is a potential threat? On one hand, blocking all unknown sites completely kills productivity, but on the other hand, just letting them through, that risks a catastrophic breach. Isolation technologies are the modern answer here, acting as a secure, invisible buffer between the unpredictable, wild internet and your actual device.
Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, decoding remote browser isolation. Second, inside the security stack. Third, core isolation features explained. Fourth, limitations and enterprise costs. And finally, number 5, the accessible Send.win alternative. Let's get right to it. Section 1. Decoding remote browser isolation.
The guide explains that RBI is really designed to handle what we call gray zone sites. URLs that aren't obviously malicious, but you definitely can't fully trust them either. Think of newly spun up, uncategorized websites, personal webmail, or those random online file converters. Instead of exposing your network to a potential zero-day exploit, RBI actually executes these pages way off in a remote cloud container. It's kind of like handling a highly suspicious package behind bomb-proof glass. Only the completely safe visual output is beamed down to your browser, completely neutralizing the threat before it ever even touches your endpoint.
Moving on to Section 2. Inside the security stack. Okay, let's dive into Security Service Edge, or SSE. This framework is absolutely crucial to understand because Aruba actually doesn't sell browser isolation on its own. Instead, they embed it deeply within this broader cloud-native SSE framework. You can think of it as the ultimate bouncer and enforcement layer for all user traffic, whether your team is accessing internal corporate applications or just browsing the open web. Aruba packages browser isolation as just one piece of a massive, unified security ecosystem. Their SSE includes Zero Trust Network Access to replace your traditional VPNs, a secure web gateway to inspect web traffic, a cloud access security broker for your SaaS apps, firewall as a service to finally eliminate that clunky on-prem hardware, and of course, remote browser isolation. Here, RBI functions as the advanced threat prevention layer that directly complements that web gateway. Now, to make all this work without causing frustrating lag for the user, because let's be honest, nobody likes a slow web page, Aruba relies on sheer, massive physical scale. They're operating over 500 global points of presence. That means their RBI guarantees that no matter where a user happens to be sitting, their isolation sessions are processed at the absolute nearest edge location for lightning-fast real-time inspection. All right, Section 3, Core Isolation Features Explained.
RBI isn't just this rigid blanket policy applied to absolutely everyone all the time. Doing that would just waste a massive amount of computing resources. Instead, it's selectively triggered through Zero Trust integration. First off, it verifies the user's identity. Next, it assesses the device's security posture, like checking to see if your OS is actually updated. Then it makes a really smart contextual decision based on that data. Finally, if the risk profile warrants it, it seamlessly enforces isolation. It's a highly intelligent, dynamic process. Historically, organizations would backhaul all their branch traffic straight through a central headquarters just for security inspection, which, as we know, creates a terrible latency bottleneck. Well, Aruba integrates natively with EdgeConnect SD-WAN to intelligently route that traffic directly from the local branch right to the nearest SSE edge. It completely eliminates that old detour, so it keeps the browsing fast while maintaining that strict enterprise-grade security. To keep everything running smoothly, Aruba uses centralized management, meaning policies can be pushed out across an entire multi-site network all at once. They also employ digital experience monitoring to track page load times and actively adjust the rendering quality on the fly. And looking toward the future, they are heavily utilizing AI-powered threat intelligence to predict and prevent unknown threats before traditional databases even have a chance to spot them. Section 4. Limitations and enterprise costs. $48,000 to $150,000. To put that into perspective, that represents the estimated annual cost for a 500-user organization. Enterprise SSE platforms typically range from about $8 to $25 per user per month. It's totally vital to understand that you're paying for the entire SASE stack here, the SD-WAN, the ZTNA, the firewall, the whole shebang, along with the isolation. For massive corporations, this unified approach makes total financial sense.
But, and this is the crucial point, there are real-world barriers for organizations that simply don't fit that large enterprise profile. As we mentioned, you cannot buy Aruba's RBI on its own. It requires buying into the whole HPE ecosystem, which definitely introduces vendor lock-in. Furthermore, deploying a full platform like this isn't a quick weekend project. It requires highly trained network engineers and can honestly take weeks or even months of intense planning and architecture changes.
Which brings us to Section 5, the accessible Send.win alternative.
The source guy uses an absolutely perfect analogy for this exact gap in the market. Quote, paying for an entire SaaS platform is like buying a semi-truck when you need a bicycle. End quote. Basically, if your team only needs simple, effective browser isolation to protect everyday web sessions, investing in a six-figure, month-long deployment of a unified security platform, that's just massive overkill.
So consider your own organizational profile for a second. Aruba is tailor-made for mid to large enterprises with 500 or more users, huge multi-site campuses, and dedicated IT teams who are ready to build out a comprehensive architecture. Send.win, on the other hand, is built specifically for freelancers, digital agencies managing a bunch of client logins, e-commerce marketers, and remote teams who just need secure, isolated access right now without the fuss.
Send.win addresses the exact limitations of the enterprise stack by offering standalone cloud browser isolation. You don't have to buy the entire network package. A massive feature for their target audience is the multi-account and profile management. This allows users to keep completely separate cookies and fingerprints for different clients. Plus, setup literally takes minutes, and the pricing is designed to be highly accessible. They even offer a free tier.
And this brilliantly illustrates the divide. When you look at the guide's impartial head-to-head market comparison, the contrast is stark. Aruba, Zscaler, and Palo Alto are all deeply integrated enterprise solutions that take weeks or months to deploy. Send.win is standalone and sets up in minutes. And crucially, especially for agencies or marketers, only Send.win offers native multi-account profile management. It highlights exactly how fundamentally different these use cases really are.
The guide's final verdict is incredibly clear and perfectly impartial. The right choice entirely depends on the size and the specific needs of your organization. If you are a large enterprise that needs global, unified networking, Aruba is a spectacular fit. But if you need agile, multi-account browser isolation without getting bogged down in massive enterprise contracts, well, Send.win delivers exactly that.
Which brings us to our final thought. Based on your team's actual needs, your budget, and your daily workflows, do you require a semi-truck or a bicycle to stay secure online today? It's an absolutely vital question to ask before locking into any security architecture. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer dive. Keep asking the right questions, and as always, stay secure out there.